Blitz Live. Luke Robinson here. Very excited to be joined by Keith Niebuhr of 247Sports. Something I've noticed about you, Keith, you seem to be Twitter's busiest man. I love getting all your tweets, talking about football recruiting from all over the country, and it's a lot of fun to read what you have going on. Thanks for being with us tonight.
Yeah, anytime. I appreciate it. I mean, Twitter's great for nerds like me because it really gives you an outlet. You know, as a reporter, you know, sometimes people don't have a way to empty their notebook. So, you know, you go to bed every night with information that you never got out to people. And that's like the worst feeling you can have as a person that prides himself on being a reporter. And Twitter really gives you that outlet to let it all out there and get it to the masses and keep them in the loop of what's going on. And the recruiting, the people that follow recruiting, it's like one big family, really.
Right.
You know what I mean? I mean, now you've got some crazy uncles like any other family, but it's really just it's a great opportunity to keep it in the news at all times.
You know, I thought it was interesting. Your latest tweet was actually not football related, not even recruiting related. It was about asking the opinion of Bobby Knight on the latest Mike Rice situation from Rutgers University, which Brett and I haven't even touched on tonight. But for those who don't know, Coach Rice, it might be former Coach Rice very soon, at Rutgers is in a lot of trouble right now for some video taken of some pretty poor treatment of his players, almost despicable treatment, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I would. It makes you wonder how much it's really going on out there in other places, you know, to be honest with you. Just some harsh treatment of kids that probably, you know, might have been acceptable 20, 30 years ago, but times have changed, you know, and you can't put your hands on kids. You can't throw basketballs at their head. You can't do things like that you know, he was kind of caught on video doing. So it's going to be interesting to see the fallout of that.
It really is. I cannot believe he wasn't fired, but that's a topic for another day. One thing I did notice was that 247 came out with their new 2014 rankings. And these rankings, of course, for 2014, I mean, it's really hard to get a good feel for where everybody is. There are not a lot of commitments out there yet, but I thought it was interesting that Texas A&M is leading the country right now in your rankings. They're number 1. Texas comes in at number 2. LSU number 3. Florida and Ole Miss. So 4 of the top 5 are from the SEC. And then really 5 of the top 7 when Tennessee checks in at 7. FSU at 6. Miami at 8. Ohio State at 9. Clemson at 10. Pretty surprisingly, Alabama's at 18. But, again, not a lot of commitments. And meanwhile, Auburn.
I didn't mean to interrupt you. It's really at this time of year, the rankings are fun because it's basically what it's telling you is who's off to a fast start. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint. So when you see an Alabama 18th, Auburn's like 41st or 42nd, all that means is they just don't have that many commitments right now. But both those schools have big visit days coming up, have spring games coming up, have their big camps over the summer coming up. And quite honestly, that Alabama camp every year, I mean, they say it's just fantastic. That's not one we're allowed to really get inside and see. Some schools let you in, some don't. But so it's not anything to really push the panic button about. But what it does tell you is it gives you a good indicator who are teams to watch here. And the most interesting team and might be Ole Miss, and here's why. Because everybody thought, you know, everybody was shocked at how well Ole Miss just finished the 2013 class. Could they do it again? Well, lo and behold, they've already got 8 commitments, and 4 of them are 4-star prospects. So you know what? Golly gee, they might be able to do it again. They might be able to keep it going. And what does that really ultimately mean? It means that potentially this is a program that's building into a team that could give a lot of people problems. You know, basketball, one class you can win a national title with. Florida did it. You know, they won 2 national titles off of one class. But in football, you have to have sustained, strong classes if you're going to compete with the Alabamas and Georgias and LSUs of the world. So for Ole Miss, if you're an Ole Miss fan, that has to be a great sign. It has to be something you're excited about.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, this Hugh Freeze guy, he may be here to stay. You know, it's one of those things that he caught everybody off guard last year, and then you think, well, that won't happen again. But my goodness, they're right there in the middle of all of it again. Who is, besides Ole Miss, who is the hot team right now? I mean, throw out the rankings. I'm talking about the team that you hear a lot recruits mentioning.
Yeah, well, Ohio State is one. They're getting a lot of run down in the South where I live. They're going after a lot of Georgia kids, and a lot of Georgia kids are talking about them. Obviously, Alabama. Right? That's not a surprise. Tennessee is kind of a buzz team right now. They had a good week a couple weeks ago. Picked up a 5-star running back in Jalen Hurd. The next day, picked up a running back that ultimately could be a 4-star running back. His name's Trayvon Pock out of the Atlanta area. Now, a lot of people haven't heard of him because he was a backup to a very good player last year, but he's an excellent running back. Tennessee's got a lot of buzz going right now. It's a lot of the same teams, to be honest with you. I would say if I was going to pick one more or two more, I'd say both Vanderbilt and Arkansas are off to nice starts right now. And again, we talked about sustaining strong recruiting classes, and Vanderbilt seems to be doing that. And then Arkansas, of course, has Brett Bielema. I can never pronounce his last name, Bielema. They have him in place right now. Now, they're off to a good start. Now, again, a good start means 4 commitments right now. Hey, look, if they still have 4 commitments in 3 months, they're not going to be 16th in the rankings. They're going to be 66th in the rankings. So that's, again, as of right now. But there's a lot of schools that I think have a lot to be happy about right now. Now, as the days and months pass by, that's when we'll really get a gauge of how somebody's recruiting. It's still way too early to tell.
Well, one other name that's huge in the top 247 is Lorenzo Carter out of Georgia. Do you know anything new on him?
Yeah, I just talked to Lorenzo actually on Saturday night and then again yesterday. And right now, for those that don't know, he's a defensive end / linebacker that lives in Norcross, Georgia, goes to Norcross High School. If you don't know, that's just a suburb of Atlanta, basically. They won a state football championship last year. They won a state basketball championship last year, and he was a very good player on both of those teams. Dating back to the year before, he has another state basketball championship. So he's a guy that's 6'5", 232, but also not only is he an outstanding defensive end, a guy with a really long reach, kind of has like a Javon Curse type of frame, I guess. Not only does he have that great football body, but he brings a certain amount of athleticism to the position that you don't see very often. If you Google him or YouTube search Lorenzo Carter, you'll find some fantastic slam dunks on the basketball court. So when you combine an unreal body with unreal athleticism, you get a guy that ultimately, he might end up the number 1 recruit in the country. Right now, I think he's the number 3, the consensus number 3. A fantastic player. Now, where does he stand recruiting-wise? Alabama and Georgia are guaranteed to making his top 5. He doesn't know the other 3 spots yet. He just visited Alabama a few weeks ago, had a great time, got to hang out with Saban, got his parents to meet Saban, and that all went well. And he told a funny story about how his mom just started asking all these questions about the 3-4 defense, and he said him and his dad were just looking at each other like it was the Twilight Zone. Like, why is she talking about this? But it was a good visit, good productive visit, and it does look like, he's saying those 2 teams are in his top 5, but right now it does look like those 2 teams are above everybody else. But again, there's a long way to go with Lorenzo. He's not going to decide, at least he's told me he's not going to make a decision until the very end. So that's going to be a long wait for everybody involved.
Well, you're going to end up answering a question and settling a debate for me right now when I ask you about Leonard Fournette or Leonard Fournette. I've been told you pronounce it both ways.
I've never asked him. It's funny. We've got a kid in the Atlanta area whose last name is Googer, and I pronounce it Googer. Other people say Googer. And I asked him, and he said, no, it doesn't matter. It's either. Some people in the family say it one way, some say it the other. I call him Fournette. Now, again, I could be completely off there, but he's talk about an outstanding player. Again, for those who don't know, that's a running back, top running back in the country. He's out of the Louisiana area, fantastic player. I know Alabama's involved. Right now, we think that LSU is probably the team to beat. I mean, it is hard to pull. When LSU wants somebody in state, it is hard to get them. Now, Alabama did get Landon Collins a couple of years ago, so it has been done. But that's going to be an interesting recruitment. I mean, everybody wants him. There's, look, anybody that followed SEC football in the 80s, you've seen this guy before. You've seen him because you've seen Bo Jackson play, and you've seen the Herschel Walkers and Lars Cates of the world, those big 1980s running backs the SEC had that were 6'1", 6'2", 210 pounds, and fast, and could run like the wind. Well, that's this guy. That's Leonard Fournette.
Wow, that's pretty high praise. I didn't expect you to go there, but that's,
I'm not saying he's as good as Herschel Walker or Bo Jackson, don't get me wrong. But I'm saying he has that body. He has that speed. He has those skills that make you harken back to, gosh, I never thought I'd use that word, but look back to those glorious days of the 80s where the power running back really ruled the roost.
Well, finally, Keith, I want to ask you about another guy that you tweeted about today that, quite frankly, I hadn't heard a lot about. His name is Dante Sawyer, and he's a 4-star guy. Tell us a little bit about him.
Yeah, and to talk a little bit about him, I'm going to go back to Lorenzo Carter for a second. What makes Lorenzo Carter so interesting is that at 6'5", 232, he could play linebacker in college, and he probably, if he went to Alabama, would play that jack linebacker position. Now, Dante Sawyer is kind of a similar type of kid. Now, he doesn't have the same frame as Lorenzo Carter, but he's 6'2", 6'3", 250, 260, plays with his hand down in high school, but in college he might slip back and become a linebacker. Now, he's a kid that's got Alabama on top. Tennessee's also in the mix. Georgia's also in the mix. Auburn's also in the mix. Auburn seems to be making a little bit of a move. Georgia seems to be making a little bit of a move. And Kentucky seems to be fading a little bit at the moment. But I would never discount this Kentucky staff yet. They haven't coached the game yet, but they've already made some pretty good inroads across the Southeast, and they're getting kids to buy into the fact that they think they're going to do something. So that's going to be interesting to watch. But he's a fantastic player. One thing about Dante Sawyer, he doesn't have Lorenzo Carter's body. There's no question about that. He'd be the first to admit that. But he has a motor that you don't see very often at the high school level, and that is one of the reasons the Georgias and Alabamas and Auburns of the world see him as a guy they really want.
Well, Keith, great information. Really appreciate your being here with us tonight, and we'll have you on again soon, okay?
Yeah, anytime, man. Thanks for having me.
That was Keith Niebuhr from 247 Sports. We'll be back in just a minute with more Sports Blitz Live.